Hello, everyone. Welcome to UGA Sports Live. My name is Radi Nabulsi. I am joined by former Georgia Bulldogs head coach Jim Donnan and, of course, our recruiting expert and team writer Jed May. He's filling in for us this week because he was actually in Indianapolis this past weekend with some of our other guys. Shout out to Bobby Andrews and who else do you went up there with? Patrick Garvin. So, yeah. I was trying to think. I was like, wait a minute, did we send four? No, we sent three guys up there. And you guys did a fantastic job covering the combine for the readers at UGASports.com. Remember, it's only 27 cents a day if you want to read the dog event and be a member at UGASports.com. So you were up there, and I didn't go this year. I had a conference I had to go to with my wife. I got to be the chauffeur and a kept man, if you will, as she was the vice chair of a major conference in Charleston. So while I was in Charleston, you were in Indianapolis eating up all our budget for the rest of the year. Thanks. I appreciate that when I see your expense report. But kind of give me your thoughts overall, and then we'll get into specifics. But there are 11 Georgia players up there. That's pretty damn good. Give me your thoughts on kind of who stood out to you right off the bat.
Yeah, I mean, it was different than last year just because you had Stetson Bennett performed well last year. You had Nolan Smith do just freakish things last year. There wasn't that one like crazy splash moment, unless you want to count Lad McConkey running a 4.39, which is obviously really good. But yeah, it was just all those guys were solid all the way around. You know, Javon Bullard, Tyke Smith ran good 40s. That'll help them. I mentioned Lad already. I think that the one, disappointment, if you could call it that, is Brock Bowers not working out. But with a guy of his caliber, you get it. I wanted to see him run the 40 like everybody else, but I would assume he would do that at Pro Day here in a couple weeks. And obviously, Amarius Mims, I guess tweaking a hamstring or whatever happened to him in the 40, that kind of sucked, especially for a drill that, you can debate the merits of it for offensive linemen, especially. The 10-yard split is important, but because they were saying on TV, like, well, maybe guys should just pull up after 10 yards, but I feel like that would be hard to do, get up to full speed. And then, so anyway, there's not a great way to do it for linemen, but it sucked to see him go down, especially when he came up and he was talking about how much he's matured, how he's approaching this like a job interview. So, a tough way to see that go down. But yeah, just another. So, like you said, it's 11 guys and all solid performances, and it's a quote unquote down year, right, compared to what it's been the past couple of years, just with all the freakish highlights Georgia guys have put out.
That's a good point. When I was thinking about who really could stand out in this, I thought that when we reported on December 8th that Lad McConkey had received a report from the a draft evaluation that he could go first day. Maybe second day, definitely second day guy, potentially easing up into the first round. Now there's a lot more people, especially after his really good week that he had at the Senior Bowl. They're thinking about him as, he's not a definite first round guy, but there have been a couple of draft projections. And of course, we've seen him anywhere from 32 to 58, but there's definitely no question that he should have gone on to the draft. Same with Brock Bowers, Amarius Mims, guys like that. I think the best thing that came out of this is I don't know that any Georgia guy hurt their draft stock. I think they all helped their draft stock. During the interviews, I didn't see any giant screw-ups. I didn't see them say anything dumb. They were very well coached in how to speak to the media. They were very well coached how to go through all their drills. And I think that 11 guys there, I think at least 10 of them get drafted. The only guy I think that might not, maybe Zion Logue. But I think the other 10 are – surefire good. Dejan Edwards, I think, will get drafted. Kendall Milton get drafted. Javon Bullard definitely get drafted. I don't see anybody kind of missing out. Or am I reading that wrong?
No, I think you're right. And even Zion Logue's work, I put this in my column I wrote yesterday. It was a lot like his career at Georgia, like not flashy, not a huge, splash, but it was solid. And he weighed in, I think, 314 pounds. So I was telling Patrick while we were there, I wonder how many NFL teams might say, hey, let's get this guy, let's put some weight on him and maybe playing, as a nose tackle, as a, guy shading over the center. And he was up front. He was like, yeah, I'm not the 8-sack, 16 tackle for loss guy. I wish I was, but I'm not. So he seemed very open to his role of, I'm just going to take up space inside and free things up for the linebackers, which is kind of what he and these interior guys are asked to do at Georgia. So, I personally really like Dayne Edwards. I know he's not the biggest guy. He's not the fastest guy. But he gets the job done. So if I was an NFL GM, I would take a shot on Dayne Edwards in the 6th or 7th round for sure. And I mean, you mentioned Ladd. The only question I had about Ladd coming in was, what are those medical reports going to look like? He's had knee trouble. He had the back thing this year. But the buzz coming out of it, I guess, they were good enough to, not outweigh what he did on the field. So, great week for him. I mean, I know the Chiefs is kind of like the spot everybody wants to pick him to at 32 with all the receiver troubles maybe they had. I'm trying to think of what the back half of that first round looks like. I mean, with free agency and stuff too, like free agency starts next week. So draft needs kind of vary based on that. But I mean, there's that top tier of receivers with the, Marvin Harrison, Rome Odunze, those guys. And I feel like there's a lot of quality options in that second tier, if you want to call it that. And Ladd certainly made a good statement in elevating himself within that second tier this week for sure.
Coach, from your take, did you see anybody that kind of either really improved their stock or hurt their stock? To me, I thought they all did solid. Nobody blew up like Noah Smith did last year, but then no one really kind of hurt themselves. I remember last year there was all the questions about Jalen Carter. He actually had to leave Indianapolis to go back to Athens to turn himself in to the police, and then came right back to Indianapolis. There was a lot of drama and news like that, just stuff that was outside the scope of the combine. But I mean, this was a pretty drama-free combine, in my opinion.
Yeah, I just think right off the bat, just the sheer size of Amarius Mims got everybody's attention with his wingspan, with his ability to communicate in the meetings. And, I had a little short text with him after he got his so-called tightness in his leg, and he said he was going to be all right. He just figured after he had run that good and he just had a little tightness, he wasn't going to do anything else. But his tape speaks for itself going against the guys he's gone against in practice, and I thought it just overwhelming how good he looked, and how easily he ran at that weight, and pretty much the same kind of impression I had when first time I ever saw him when he came to that junior day up here at UGA, and I told you about him that he was going to be a first round draft choice, and I wasn't stepping out on a limb there. But I think too that Milton didn't run a tremendous 40, but his 20 split was really good, 10-yard split. All that was good because that's what you want, acceleration. He showed really good hands, and I think he'll do well in the pro day. Also, Kamari Lassiter had the best three-cone drill time, which shows you his immediate quickness and ability to recover and all that everybody loves to see in a corner. And then you're going to add Bullard and Tyke with the stats they had. They'll show some one-on-one stuff here when they come to the deal here in next Wednesday, I think. And then Brock told me, Brock Bowers, that he just felt like he needed a little more time on his ankle. He feels good about it, but there's anything he's going to do to change much. And I'm sure he'll do some testing here next week, but more just route running than anything. It'll be Carson Beck's show. If they get Carson out there, it'll be a good chance for him to throw to all those guys, those two receivers, Bowers, and those two backs. I would think that he would do them a favor and throw to them, and he'd do all the NFL scouts a lot of favors too, having him work out for them. So, but I think for just a marketing standpoint, Georgia having that many guys there, and of course Alabama, as much as I hate to admit it, going to have 4 guys in the first round with Latham and those 2 defensive back. McKinstry didn't come out and wasn't able to practice, but because of an injury, and then of course Latham and Turner. So that's 4 first rounders that Alabama's going to have, and we'll probably have at least 2. Lassiter is going to be right up there, and I think McConkey, as Jed alluded to. And Jed, I just want to say to you professionally, that was a really good job that you did. You didn't have very tough shoes to fill filling in for Radi, but
Come on, man, catching strays over here.
You did a good job.
I appreciate it, and
you did a good job of really getting to the point, which that's what you got to do. People got all kind of choices to read about this, and of course you can watch it on the NFL Network, and it was a good chance for you to interview those guys and all. But I think the thing that Georgia has, these guys know how to train for the combine. Kirby and Sinclair and them teach them how to do that, and they do really well, as you mentioned, Radi, on the ways that they can communicate when they have a chance to talk to the press too. And I think it's unfair sometimes to those guys. There's so many Georgia people there that they ask them all kind of chicken shit questions about things that aren't really have anything to do with the draft, but they got a chance to interview them and take away from some of the national people. But I'm more interested in what these guys are going to do now as pros, and I think we have a good contingent of guys drafted again.
Hey, Coach, I want to get your thoughts on this real quick. Ladd McConkey running a 4.39, lights out. But that sucker benched 225 13 times.
He's the thing that's so hard.
Little.
It's a Stetson Bennett deal. People can't grasp that a walk-on quarterback led the team to the national championship. People can't grasp that a 3-star recruit from northern Georgia has come in here and played at the level he has. Irrespective of that, these guys are really talented individuals that have tremendous skill at their position. As we've talked about so many times for people who watch our podcast, he's a consummate route runner. And as much as we miss Bowers, we missed his deep play ability, his ability to make the intermediate catch would have been huge for our team. And I was going back and forth with Daniel Jeremiah a couple of times during the broadcast, and he mentioned about the fact that when he started talking about Mitchell and Burton, and then said Bowers and McConkey, and then all those other guys that played on that 21 team on offense, not to mention that all-star unit on defense. And it's just an incredible gathering of talent. And you give Kirby and his staff a lot of credit for not only recruiting them, but developing him. And the thing about McConkey is he's just cold-blooded too. He's going to go after you. I mean, he likes to whip your ass. And I think he's got a really good shot of going. And as Jed alluded to, the problem is you got 3 or 4 guys there, and Neighbors and that other kid from LSU and Duncy, and then, of course, Marvin Harrison Jr. He was AWOL up there. I mean, I don't even know. He didn't even do an interview, did he?
No, and he was supposed to be at he was going the same day Kendall Milton and then went. So a combine supervisor or whatever came out and was like, yeah, Kendall's running a little late, because that happens. Like I think they do medical stuff like right before they come out
really late.
And Kendall had an MRI on his knee, had an X-ray on his elbow that he broke in 8th grade, so he took a little while. But there was a guy next to me asked the supervisor, like, what time you hear anything on Marvin Harrison? And there's a supervisor and there's a kid there holding a microphone to get the players' answers. And the kid with the microphone's like, oh, I don't think he's coming. Like I saw on Twitter, he's not gonna be here at all. The supervisor guy left, came back, and like reamed that kid out. He's like, you are not to talk to the media. Like just like look, I didn't know at the time. I didn't really need to talk to Marvin Harrison, but he was supposed to talk at I think 8:20, and this was about 10:30 when Kendall was supposed to come up. So he was already 2 hours late at that point. And yeah, I don't guess as far as I know, he never showed up at all.
The irony of this whole professional deal up there is you got a guy like Marvin Harrison who, he's going to be an unbelievable pro. And then Caleb Williams not only didn't throw or work out, he didn't even take a physical. I mean, he just basically said, I'm not doing it. I'm just going to have a physical with because he thinks he's going to be the first guy drafted, which he probably will.
He's like, there's only 5 teams that would have a chance to draft him, so I'm only going to do medical stuff with him.
Well, his dad's running the show here. I mean, just like he did when he was in the 10th grade when he came down here. His dad was as close to being a handler for a father as I've ever been around. And I got a text from Coach Switzer here about two days into the draft, and he was talking about Caleb. In fact, when Caleb came out to Oklahoma, I told him he was going to beat Rattler out, and he said, "Oh, you're not." And of course he did, and that wasn't hard to pick. But kind of ironic here that in the space of 1 year here, we've had so many things happen at Georgia, and like I told Roddy, if you'd have told me that Carson Beck would be driving a Lamborghini and James Coley would be the receiver coach last year at this time, I tell you, smoking some bad weed, but hey,
bad Mad Libs.
Hey,
Bad reading of Mad Libs.
And that's why you got to get your stuff from the Rogue Shop, Coach. You know that. Then you don't have any of those bad issues.
I want to warn some people here. I mean, I watch with all this Super Tuesday, and I got so much time, I just can't watch Sports Center. I've been watching some news here, and they're saying that they've done a study that weed. People that smoke weed have a 45% better chance of having a heart attack or stroke, very similar to what smoking cigarettes do. So you weed people out there, be a little careful about it.
Yeah, that's important. We were talking about wide receivers and Marvin Harrison not exactly being – it doesn't sound like he's very professional, but I thought a guy that kind of helped himself, especially at with the Senior Bowl and this week, was Marcus Roseby-Jack Saint. I know he doesn't show up on a lot of places, but as an easy guy to root for, and it would not shock me if he gets into the league and has like a Chris Conley type career. And he might not. He may not.
You got to see what he runs, though. I mean, that's going to be huge. I don't know.
That was a guy who, and let's see, let me look at this story. He didn't. Let me find him on this thing. He didn't.
Run a 40, did he?
He did not run a 40.
Yeah.
I mean, a 35-inch vertical is not bad. I mean, by any means. But yeah, I was curious to see, because if you watch his tape, he's a guy who can go up and get the ball. I mean, you think of that catch he made in the back of the end zone against Tennessee. He's got that athleticism. What does the speed look like? Is it, he's not cracking 4.4, but if he anything sub 4, like mid 4.5s or below, I think would be a pretty good time for him. And that's
exactly right. And
that's what he was one of the ones that I was, because I mean, Brock Bowers is 40, like you said, whether it's 4.45 or 4, like it's Brock Bowers is his draft stock's not going to change that much based on his 40. Marcus Rosemy could have helped himself, I think, if he ran a good 40, and I'm sure he will a pro day and those numbers get out there too. But that was a guy I thought had a lot to gain, maybe.
Here's the thing about Brock Bowers. Let's just pretend that Roddy's the general manager and said, "Hey, Brock," and I'm going to be Brock. Just ask me, "Hey, have you ever been clocked in a GPS?"
Yeah, you ever had a GPS time there, Brock?
I don't like to do these interviews, but I'm going to tell you that I was. And so I guess I should tell you that I ran 21.4. So, I mean, come on. How many of those guys going to be 21.4 like Brock Bowers? Unless it's Jason Riddell.
Yeah, I mean, you go back to that the clip that went around this week of him against UAB.
Jason Riddell's already run over 21 here.
The clip of him against UAB zipping down the sideline. The guy who catches him to celebrate with him is Lad McConkey running him down. And I get it. You're outrunning UAB defensive backs, but those guys are 10, 15 yards downfield ahead of you. So you're basically giving them a head start.
Right.
Outrunning anybody like that's nuts. And those two guys, I'm like, man, to your point, Coach, game speed. What they've shown on GPS means something. That's why I'm like, when I look at Marcus Roseby-Jack Saint, I'm like, we never talk about this guy. And I just think that he has that potential in him just to be that. If he gets the chance in the NFL, I think he could be a monster. But he may never get it.
We saw in the Senior Bowl, Rattler threw him a fade, but But another point that I got just thinking about it when I was watching all the combine, everybody getting red ass about Georgia never signing any receivers. Well, I mean, if you think about Pickens, Mitchell, Burton, McConkey, Bowers, Washington, all the tight ends, I mean, those are some pretty dang good receivers now. And, of course, 2 of them left here. But I think Mitchell helped himself at that time, too. But he's not even the fastest guy on Texas team. That Xavier Worthy went even faster. But you talk about a team that has some athletes on it. You look at those defensive players that Texas had, and then all those guys that, I mean, they're close to Alabama as far as the talent level. And I don't think Sark recruited any of those guys. The previous guy got most of them, or they are transferred. But we're getting ready to, I think with Coley, you're going to get back on this train where you're going to get some of these receivers now. And that'll be for sure. And I think certainly BMAC was doing it too. But got to give old Coach Monken some credit for picking out Mitchell when nobody really knew about him. And also Bell, wasn't really highly recruited. I mean, Bell will light the combine up like a big generator. I mean, you talk about a guy that's got unbelievable vertical and just great hands, and he's getting ready to be big time for us next year.
Well, and Coach, to your point, also look at you've been the guy that showed me how often Georgia throws to the running backs as well. All those passes to James Cook and Zamir White and, Kendall Milton and Dejan Edwards, just throwing them out to those guys. There's some guys out there in the NFL right now who are showing what they can do.
That's what got Kenny Mack. That's what got him into the league.
Yeah.
His ability to catch the ball. And
he's your leading receiver for a while.
Backs and tight ends are quarterback's best friend.
That's true. All right, let me bring this up here real quick. We'll finish up with Jed here. Jed, give me your final thoughts on the combine, and then we're going to let you go and hit a commercial break after you give us your final take.
Well, I heard a lot of guys get asked if birds were real, if they believed in space. So, I heard a lot of that this week. But no, seriously. It's like y'all said, the Georgia guys are very, they're very polished. They're very polished at the podium. They know how to go through these drills. Coach, you would know better than I would, but I'm sure they do this combine style testing regularly to get ready. And guys, they mentioned versatility so much. Lad McConkey was like, yeah, I can play inside or in the slot. Kamari Lassiter, I can play outside or in the slot. Bullard and Tyke Smith were like, okay, safety, we can play nickel. Cedric Van Pran said, yeah, I repped at guard some in practice last year just to be ready for if a team wants me at guard. So I think the overall message is like the Georgia coaches are going to do whatever they can to obviously win football games in college, but make sure these guys get developed and at least have a shot to go to the combine, show what they got, and get drafted. So like you said, Roddy, there was 11 guys there. I would put pretty decent money down that 10 get drafted, maybe all 11. And yeah, it's going to be another big round of rookies in the NFL next year for sure. Hopefully the Browns get one. So
no, none of that Browns garbage. Get that out of here.
Who's the Eagles going to take?
Who's who?
Who the Eagles going to take? Keep that going. But hey, you talking about the Browns here? We got you on here live. What do you think? What do you think about Deshaun Watson? What's your thought? Should they keep him or go with him or?
I don't know. I mean, the talent is there. It's just you're hurting the rest of your team building so much by you giving up 3 first-round picks and you're paying him $55 million. Like, if they have to cut Nick Chubb to pay off the stupid Deshaun Watson contract, then that's just like nothing would sum up that franchise more than cutting the guy that everybody loves for the guy that everybody hates. So
you're right.
I saw what Detroit did this year. I know Cleveland would be the same if they made a run like that. I just hope I've got about hopefully I got about at least 55, 60 years on this planet. Hopefully we get a title before then. So
well, how about Denver getting rid of Russell Wilson, taking 37?
Future Atlanta Falcon, Russell Wilson.
Hey, as a Falcons fan, I enjoy Jed's pain pulling for the Browns. Just like
Surely the
you
Falcons,
enjoy someone else's misery.
surely the Falcons will draft one of these 11 guys.
Well, Roddy, I mean, you remember last year, and I know we got to get to commercial, but
They're going
remember
to take
last
Jermaine
year,
Burton.
remember how all the scouts were salivating last year. Man, this Will Levis guy, he can throw it so far. Anthony Richardson, he can do a backflip. And me and you were sitting there, we we're like, we watched these guys play, and we didn't see it. And then they both had pretty solid flashes in rookie years. I mean, Richardson obviously got hurt, but that was JJ McCarthy this year. And I haven't seen it, but again, I mean, based on how my predictions went last year, kid could go on to be a Hall of Famer for all I know. So.
Yeah, just don't take Bo Nix. Falcons.
Yeah, and that's the thing. We've all seen Bo Nix. We've seen him play for a long time, and but again, I don't. These guys get paid a lot of money to do that. I don't get paid for anything I do. So let alone to evaluate him.
3 years old already. Bo.
Yeah. Well, the Browns drafted a 29-year-old guy in the first round once, so we can. Anything's possible. I've learned to just never rule out anything.
Well, they also fired Bill Belichick.
Well, announcing you're moving your team to Baltimore in the middle of the year kind of puts the kibosh on everything.
Look at JJ McCarthy. That's so mean.
He's a good player now. He's a lot better than you think.
Yeah. All right, Jed, we're going to let you go. We appreciate you jumping on with us.
Appreciate it, Jed.
Yeah, man. See y'all later.
And we'll bring on Dayne here. But as we bring him on, I do want to mention our friends at Athens Ford. When you get the chance, they are doing it's truck month. They've got some fantastic deals on their Ford Broncos. You can get $4,000 off the 2023 Ford Bronco models, the 2024 Ford Edge, if you want a little smaller car. Edge is a fantastic thing to zip around town in. Up to $7,000 off MSRP or 0% APR financing for 60 months. Now, you guys know interest rates are nuts. If you can get 0% APR for 5 years, of course, you got to qualify for it, but that's ridiculous. Trying to think, what else do they have? Of course, they have their $500 discount for military members, past and present, current students, and recently graduated students. You can also get $500 off. If you want to get that Ford F-150, the Lightning Platinum, their EV, up to $20,000 off MSRP on that one. So check it out when you get a chance. And, of course, if you just want the regular Ford F-150, I say regular, still the best-selling truck in America, up to $12,000 off on that one or 1.9% APR financing. So some great deals they have going on right there. Also want to mention our friends at Academia Brewing Company. If you're on the east side of town and you're checking out, Athens Ford, you're like, hey, I love the Fords out here. I love the vehicles. We just bought a new truck. Now let's go celebrate. Go by Academia Brewing Company. Try their new beers. Try their great new food. There's always something new on the food menu. There's always new beers. Go out there and get the flights. The flights they do are pretty neat because they come from a barrel stave. The curved barrel sections. And they've got holes cut out into it. They drop the little glasses into, and you can try a bunch of different beers without ordering, an 8-ounce, 16-ounce beer. So try a flight, see which one you like, and then order a big one of that one. I warn you, if you're going out there at lunch, they have some high gravity beers. So be careful what you order at lunch if you got to go back to work, or else you'll be flying at work the next day. So check out the great beer, the great food. And of course, they're always doing fundraisers and they're always doing something fun. They're like Trivia Tuesdays, bike nights. They have karaoke. There's always crazy stuff going on out at Academia Brewing Company. They've been in business, I think, 6 years now? So check them out when you get the chance. Academia Brewing Company on the west side of Athens. All right, we're going to add our man, Dayne Young. Well, we'll let him add himself to the show.
I do have those powers. Did Jed bring you some of the St. Elmo's cocktail sauce?
He did not, nor did he bring me a sandwich from Shapiro's, which was the one thing I told him to do.
Well,
so Jed may not be on the show ever again.
Well, Coach, one of my favorite things about the NFL process and the combine is just the mirror that it is to Georgia's program or any program to tell you what the NFL thinks about Georgia. And I think enough time has passed now to where we can look at the talent that was on that national championship team, the first one that won against Alabama. And what the NFL is saying, because I tallied this up just this morning, was that as we're sitting here, Georgia's has 8 first-round picks off of that team. And I'm looking about the best 25 players, starters plus a few more. You'd have 8 first-round picks, 2 second-round picks, 3 third-round picks, 4 fourth-round picks, 3 in the 5th, 3 in the 6th. And that's before you get to McConkey, Bowers, A.D. Mitchell, and Jermaine Burton, and Cedric Van Pran. So 5 more could be added to that total to have just a ton of picks off of that team that contributed that first title year.
Mims too, right?
Yeah, I guess Mims didn't play very much that year, but I'm just saying for that one season.
He made the trip.
Yeah, he was there and he practiced, I suppose. But that's just, it's loaded. And you start seeing these. James Cook was one of the best playmakers in the NFL this year.
Yeah, I mean, you had James Cook, and then Zamir comes in there and does good. And of course, we can go over that ad nauseum, but it's pretty obvious that recruiting is top notch here and continues to be, and the development is what I like, just because they challenge them daily and they work at it. And I thought the respect that a guy like A.D. Mitchell said, even though he is in another program, about what he was able to do here at Georgia and how it helped him promote and be a better player. Always, a lot of times the guys are bitter when they leave, and certainly we know he had the issue with his daughter and all that, but I thought that was really relevant that he did a good job talking about what Georgia meant to him. I never will forget, I told Radi this, the first year that he was here over December, he had come in here to do like all the young guys that came early enrolled. He came in for 4 or 5 days to practice, and he was going back to Houston, and they were picking him up over here at the Georgia Center on that Broom Transportation. And my daughter was coming in from Oklahoma, and I just happened to be there waiting for her, and he was standing there. He was going on the outbound thing, and she was coming on the inbound, and I talked to him, and I called Kirby right then. I said, this kid right here has really got a good perspective on everything, and very mature and very sold on Georgia. I said, I don't know what kind of player he is, because he either had COVID or had something wrong with him. He couldn't practice, so I didn't get to watch him. But that was my first impression of A.D. Mitchell, and it was a good one.
And he is fun to watch the Georgia fans. I mean, he loves Georgia. Georgia fans love him. It's so funny how it's completely opposite of, like, say, Jermaine Burton. That's why I was kind of laughing, talking about the Falcons drafting one of those 11 guys. I'm like, no. To your point, they'll get a Bo Nix, they'll get a Jermaine Burton, they'll get somebody that Georgia fans are familiar with, but not a guy that will put fans' butts in seats. And I'm like, don't do it, guys. Don't do it, the Falcons.
Coach, I did want to ask you, though, just some of these drills that we see at the combine, because every year that this comes through, it seems like there's a more and more echoing of some teams just don't care about these drills in maybe ways that they once did. I mean, there was a time where Al Davis would draft a guy based on the 40 time. I think we saw that. But are you seeing the NFL teams are relying on these drills and these numbers slightly differently, or is it just the same and we're talking about it differently?
Well, you got some characteristics that are typical of an NFL draft choice that you measure them by the history of that position, and this guy's up to that standard. I remember Bill Parcells made a statement about 4 or 5 years ago when he was on TV talking about the draft, and he says, if you make exceptions to the rule because of a gut feel or something, occasionally you can do it, but if you do it more than one time in a draft, it's going to come back to bite you, because history tells you what it takes to play this position. And certainly you hope that the guy's got the way he work, he's got good work ethic, and he's a good kid and all. But what everybody needs to remember is look who he's going against. I mean, if everybody can just remember that played sports, how hard it was to move from junior high to high school and start playing. And then from high school to college, now to the pros, it's like a 1 percentile there. And everybody that's chasing after you or you're trying to defend against yourself is the same kind of caliber athlete. So just a quantum jump. So to answer your question, which I took a long time, they definitely go by these specifics and they go by the look test for sure, because they want to see how their tape. The best thing is tape. Are you a football player? This is not the bikini Olympics here where it's all based on you look good, in shorts and all that. But what can you do as a football player? How can you transport that to being a guy that makes plays on the field? And that's where a guy like Bullard and Tyke can tackle in space. McConkey can block on the perimeter. Van Pran can play numerous positions. He can snap the ball in the gun. And all those things add up.
It reflects the recruiting process, Roddy. I mean, we've seen it that Georgia has these charts for these positions, or for that you need to be a certain weight, you need to be a certain speed to do certain things. Like you have to abide by that. I think that's what Coach is saying.
No, to your point, I was just about to bring up recruiting. They have their I don't call them rules, but they have their standards. And Matt Godwin told me this, and I don't know if he developed it or if he got it from Marshall Malchow or where it started, but this is a saying in the Georgia recruiting office. I don't know if it's on the wall in there, chiseled in stone, but basically, if you're going to make an exception, it has to be an exceptional player. So if you're going to take a wide receiver who's 5'10", then he better be exceptional, when you want a bigger guy. If you're going to take somebody who's like a running back, we talked about Kendall Melton not exactly killing it with his 40 time. There has to be something exceptional about him that's, you say, well, he doesn't hit this size spot. He doesn't hit this weight spot. He doesn't hit this speed spot. But there's something else about him that's off the charts, and that's why we're going to take him. So we're going to make an exception to our rule because he's exceptional, and we've definitely seen that. So when Georgia makes exceptions, most of the time they work out. Or at least there have been a lot of high-profile ones that work out. But we go to camps all the time, and we talk to Georgia kids, and they're like, hey, well, what do you think Georgia thinks about me? Or do you think I could get on with Georgia? And I'm like, you're a great kid, but, you're 5'9". It's just
right.
Hey,
that's the way it goes. But
I hate to break their hearts, but I want to be honest with them. Like,
you got to be. But let's just give them an example here that's very vivid. If you look at some of the recruiting mistakes that Georgia's made, the only time that they had more than one or two was the COVID year when they couldn't bring them in here and test them.
Yeah.
And we made some mistakes on some old linemen, no question about it, and didn't work out. And they're not here anymore, but and maybe a couple other positions. But the bottom line is, and I've told you this, Roddy, and Dayne maybe a couple times, I love the summer when they have these kids in here to test them and work them out, and because I get a chance to look at them sometimes, and I go over there, and I'm old, but I can pick out a player, and it's a pretty good indicator watching what they can do, go through what Kirby and all these guys put them through, and so sometimes we get people on websites and why isn't Georgia recruiting them? I guarantee you that they check every kid out, and if they're not recruiting them, it's because they don't think you'll fit in.
Well, and now, Coach, with these summers, Georgia will have an inherent advantage that these players that are coming in to work out grew up watching Georgia win national championships. This happened very quickly, and playing in national championships, even if you want to go back to 17, they see Georgia as the dynasty right now.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, a lot of times 5 or 6 years ago, Georgia wasn't quite up there with where Alabama was and Clemson and all that. But, another thing I thought was pretty cool was seeing those Clemson kids in the locker room watching Wiggins run the 40. And, it's a competitor of ours, Clemson, but most teams, and we saw that last year when Smith did so well, our guys watching him in the locker room, they relate to these players and they're happy for them because they're good team guys and that's good for morale and see one of their guys be one of the best players in the country when they got a chance to show their wares.
I want to talk about something that Joe Wyndon brought up on Rumors versus Facts last week. He talked about, to your point, in the summers. Sometimes in 5 or 6 years ago, you would have a big name kid who would come to Georgia and he wouldn't camp. He's like, I'm a superstar. I don't need to perform. And Georgia is not going to offer you and recruit you hard unless you want to come, show up, show out, show what you can do. And yeah, you've got film, but they want to see. I don't care who you are. We mentioned Deshaun Watson. They want Deshaun Watson to throw in front of them. They want, you come run, come do drills. We want to see if we can break you. That COVID year where you couldn't get those kids in here, Stacey Searles, I've seen him do it in his first iteration here. He'll run those kids through a camp back when we used to actually be able to go watch the camps. Those kids are dragging. They're pouring sweat. He's like, do it again, do it again. And he's going to run them as hard as possible to see what they're made out of.
And see what they're made of, too, about their how tough they are, internally. But the other thing that Kirby wants to see is how do you compete?
Yeah.
I mean, nothing makes them feel better, or any coach, which you can't let them do and say, hey, coach, can I go out there and throw with your receivers, or can I go out there and catch from Carson Beck? Well, you can't do that, but you can certainly let them watch our guys and everything. But it's good to hear a guy wants to go out there and see how he does, but that camp, and I'm sure everybody's doing it now, but it's a fail safe. You know what I mean? It really is a good way to figure out. And I remember one of our camps, we had like 6 guys that all ended up being starting quarterbacks everywhere. Phillip Rivers, Charlie Whitehurst, just one guy after another. And they were all out there competing against each other, and they were doing all these drills, and they were busting ass to see if they were the best guy in our camp. And that was impressive. I like that.
Phillip Rivers didn't have kids running around with him at that time, did he?
What is he up to, 10 now?
He's got a ton of them. I think he's a high school coach in Alabama, last I heard.
Yeah, he's down there near the coast. And he had a great career there at NC State, and very fortunate for Chuck Amato that Auburn, Tommy Tuberville, his dad went to Auburn, and Tommy offered him a scholarship as a tight end, and Chuck Amato got the job at NC State, and Chuck asked me if there's any quarterbacks. I said, yeah, you should look at this Phillip Rivers guy. And then he ended up getting Rivers, and they got it rolling over there at NC State.
That's awesome. To your point, I remember one of the dog night camps where Corey Moore and Amarlo Herrera were stealing reps from everybody. So you'd have a guy like 13 deep. They'd go do a rep, and they're like, okay, next guy's up. They wouldn't go to the back of the line. They'd go about 3 or 4, break in so that they got back to the top. And they were already committed. And Corey Moore and, of course, Marlo Herrera played great for Georgia. But there was no trophy at the end of the camp. They just wanted to beat everybody's ass. And you could tell the coaches love that stuff. Whereas at this past camp that we had in Carrollton, there was a Georgia target, and I was asked about him. I'm like, yeah, that kid they're doing 2 different halves of the field, and he would do 1 rep on one side and then go to the other one and go to the back of the line there. And then when he got near the front, he'd go to the back of the line on the other side. And we only saw like 2 reps all day. This kid did not want to show out in front of anybody. He's a young guy, but to your point, like Coach said, you want to see if they want to compete. That kid did not want to compete. And
I give you a good camp.
I was asked about it, and I gave my honest opinion.
Give you a good camp story here, because all the Georgia people love to hear about Georgia guys. But we were recruiting David Pollock, and he'd just gone over to Clemson's camp a couple of days before, and he had a slight tweak in his hamstring. And, he came over, and he was really geared up about Georgia. Wasn't any question about it. And I told him, his mother told me, said, hey, Coach, Davey hurt his leg, and you tell him that it's not going to make any difference about you recruiting him and all. I don't want him to get hurt and everything. So I told him, I said, hey, Dave, you got a hamstring, you got to let it rest and everything. And he said, okay. And it was just killing him, because he was standing there in the drills, and he was watching all these guys, and you could just see him thinking, hey, I know I can whip this guy's ass. I can do all. And everybody knows what kind of competitor he is. So we have these things at night where he played, we call Georgia football, where they play 7-on-7, but it's really flag football. And you throw the ball anywhere on the field. You know what I mean? You can throw it behind the line, down the field, and it's really kind of a fun type deal. And you mix up the teams. So I tried to go around and watch all the kids, and be around as the coach and everything. So I go down there to field 3, and Pollock's on one of these 7-on-7 teams out there running up and doing all this. And I went over. I said, "What are you doing?" He said, "Coach, I just couldn't stand it. So I just had to get out of here." And so it just goes to show you the competitive nature that a guy has. I said, "Well," and one of our guys came over and said, "This guy's unbelievable talent." I said, "Oh, we do that, but still, it's the thing that you just mentioned, Roddy, that I was saying. These kids want to give you a good idea of what they can do, and that if you can get them on your campus to a camp, and you can evaluate them, but you can also really do a lot of inroads, because all of a sudden you say, okay, you're tight end. Let's say Dayne's in here from down there at Dublin, and then you work him out a little bit and say, hey, here's Brock Bowers here. He's going to take you over to our meeting. I want you to sit in with Brock and let him answer some questions and all that. I mean, you can't beat that. I mean, no, that's good stuff. And then all of a sudden, you're not supposed to eat up here at Bones on our training table, but if you walk by, you might be able to pick up something on the way out.
Hey guys, speaking of eating some really good stuff that you need to try, when you get a chance, grab the UGASports, the new pizza they have out. They're the spicy pulled pork one. This is a good looking pizza here, and trust me, they're named pizzas, the ones that you can just go in and order, say, hey, I want a nat, I want a great white, I want the lineage. When they come out with a specialty pizza, because the whole concept at UGASports is to go in, pick your dough, pick your sauce, pick your cheese, pick your toppings, and build it yourself. When they actually come out with one, they're like, hey, we're going to give one a name, and we're going to make it a special. And you just come in and we make it. We know everything comes on it. And of course, you can adjust. Hey, leave this on, or leave this off, or add extra, whatever. You can do that. But when you get a chance to go in and say, hey, give me one of your specialties, that's because they've tested the hell out of it. They've put it in front of everybody, and everybody that tried it loved it. So go grab the spicy pulled pork pizza. It's just, it looks phenomenal. I can't wait to have one. And I'm going to order it today, because I'm not going to eat it today, but I'll probably order one for like Thursday, and I'll get my double points today. The points will add up, and I'll be able to get like a free breadsticks, free gelato, free ice cream, or, free drinks or stuff like that, because I'll do it on Tuesday when it's double points. So hit them up when you get a chance. Also, if you're looking to change jobs, now I've told people for years, if I'm not doing this job, then I'll probably open a UGASports franchise. Well, I don't know how to open a franchise, but if I reach out to myperfectfranchise.net, Andy Ludecky and the folks at My Perfect Franchise, he will show me how to do it, how to get it financed, what are the questions I need to be asking, what are the questions I need to be answering, how much time is involved, how much money is involved, how much dedication. Do I need to hire a manager? All these questions that you don't even know to ask. Andy Ludecky has been through it with a ton of our readers, and he's gotten them into their own businesses. So if you want to get out of the rat race, you want to have more PTO, you want to have more say in your life, reach out to myperfectfranchise.net. Andy Ludecky, he can answer all the questions for you. It doesn't cost you anything. It's free. The franchise company pays him. So he will get you into the right franchise based on what you can do, or what you need to do, or want to do. So reach out to myperfectfranchise.net when you get the chance.
We'll get to questions from UGASports.com in a moment, but Coach, I wanted to get your thoughts on the proposed potential rule changes from the NCAA football committee on helmet communications, and then potentially adding the 2-minute warning to college football, because that looks like it's on the table as well.
Well, it's a no-brainer on the helmet thing. I mean, it's just easy communication, and you got the money for it now. I think it's something you can utilize, and certainly help the communication to your offense and your defense. Teams are going to have to adjust a little bit because they signal that not only to the quarterback but all of the skill people. So they'll probably continue to do that. But the quarterback and the thing in the pros, the quarterbacks are in the huddle most of the time, so they can call it. But so many teams don't huddle anymore, so there'll be adjustment there. As far as the other thing, what was the other one you mentioned?
2-minute warning.
Well, I think all of us are used to that, and we lost some time last year with the new clock rules where we kept running and didn't stop for a first down like it used to. So I'm happy about the 2-minute warning. I think it'll be good, and of course all the people in the marketing are happy because it's more commercial, so they'll jump all over that.
Questions from UGASports.com. First from UGA Alum 95 says that he found it interesting that during or after the combine, pretty much every expert, without exception, said that Amarius Mims should have played another year at UGA to prove that he can play an entire season without going down for major injuries, and that he needs to prove that he can finish games, citing injuries at the combine. Coach, what were your thoughts on Amarius Mims with that?
Well, I mean, he's basing that on what some people said, but I can tell you right now, he's going in the first 15. And what are they supposed to do when you get tightrope surgery on your foot? I mean, that's what happened to him. And he came back and tried to play and at 200, 350 pounds. And I'm not just defending him because he's a Georgia guy. And then he'd already run a 5-flat 40. He'd already broad jumped. He'd already taken all the other tests. So why take a chance when you pull up with a little tightness? And that can happen when you're that big because you're not used to running 40. So I think the proof will be in the pudding when the guy's drafted in the first 10.
If that's the case, he's likely Georgia's first selection. He and Bowers, one of the two. But
Yeah,
if it's top 10, I would think so.
Those are top two.
Bush Dog, how frequently do Georgia coaches communicate with current players' parents? Is it consistent check-ins or as needed? Are there some families that are, quote, involved more than others?
Well, you got to have that dialogue. And I think that a parent in today's society needs to have it with his own kids' teachers because they're spending more time with your kids than you are. So what are they doing with them? People say, well, I don't have time to go to the PTA. Get your ass over there and talk to them because they're going to be the people that are directing and doing so many things with your kids. So, and Kirby and his staff, our player personnel people, Jonas Jennings, Austin Chambers, all those guys, they're constantly talking to parents about kids' grades, about, what they're doing. Also, they have, with the ability to have Zoom, now there's always, question and answer period about things and very good open dialogue there. And it should be. We always had a deal where every coach's number was available to all the parents, and mine was too, because if you have an issue, I can't do anything about the guy making the travel team on Thursday night when he called me and say why isn't he on the travel team. But I can just tell you why he wasn't. But the reality is you got to communicate with the families. That's important because, and you also need the families to back you up. You just can't say, hey, you're getting screwed. They're not giving you a chance. What we do is keep a constant file. When I say we, Georgia, keep a constant file on their practice tape. And if somebody's got a question about it, we'll say, here's your son. This is what he's doing. This is what the guy in front of him is doing. And that's pretty much tells you.
And this was more about recruiting, though.
This said current players' parents.
Yeah. As far as the recruiting, talking to their parents, how many days?
I'm sorry. I thought it was asking about recruiting. Yeah, that is.
How many days in a year?
Pretty much.
365. You better be texting those parents, their teachers, their counselors, their girlfriends.
I got it from or sometimes more involved than others. That's why I was thinking about recruiting because it's been.
Everybody wants to be.
Hell, you're talking about Caleb Williams' dad earlier.
Everybody wants to be stroked. I mean, you got to do it. But there's a fine line between the reality of how it's going to be, which you got to be blunt about it, and then these salesmen that tell them stuff they want to hear, but it's not true.
Yeah.
It's spring break on campus this week, so it's pretty empty. That means next week the focus does shift to spring football. And Debusk 2310 asks, which of the wide receivers does Coach think will have the biggest impact this year?
Bell. I think Bell will be big time. Of course, we got others like Lovett and Ra, and then you got the guys coming in. And then I think Anthony Evans will be a real surprise about how good he is. People hadn't had a chance to see him. He saw him against Alabama on the return, but we'll have some outstanding receivers, and I think Delp and Lucky, and then Sperlin, these young guys will have good tight end. Then our receiver will be better because our running game will be a little more explosive there with ETN back there. I just think sets up play action for Carson. This is going to be really strong.
We talked so much about what James Coley will do with recruiting. I do think it's interesting. There's a lot of new faces and bodies in that room at receiver through the portal. And so there's just a lot of shift and changes there. Having Carson Beck as the steady force, that's got to be clutch for that group.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. And, word of mouth is good. I thought it was good that the quote that I can't pronounce his first name, Anais Smith, is that the guy at Texas? He was talking about what a impact Coley had on his career and how fortunate Georgia was to get him. You can't beat stuff like that when a guy talks about a coach. And of course, we know what Coley can do, but he's got that moniker of being a great recruiter, but he's a very good technician. And he's the one that brought Cager in here, and you saw what Cager could do when he was really going, and then he got hurt. And not to mention Pickens and all these other guys.
Pickens. Yeah. I like the fact that you're talking about that room and new faces, and of course Coley in there. Ra Thomas, Dominic Lovett, Michael Jackson III, Colby Young, London Humphreys, and of course then all the freshmen like Scobie White and Nitro Tuggle. 5 transfer wide receivers in that group. So
yeah, 5, or I thought we had 4.
I think it's 5.
Who's the other one? Guy from USC, Vanderbilt, Miami, and
we got Ra Thomas and Dominic Lovett.
Count 2.
Counting, yeah.
Yeah, from before.
Then you got Michael Jackson, Colby Young, and London Humphreys.
Yeah. Like, way to come up with a good stat there, right? The guy's transfer's been there a year.
Well, I'm just saying it's new faces, new guys that Georgia's making a living in the transfer portal, and you're going to bring in a really good recruiter. I'm like, this could be a very interesting room.
Not really good. You ever heard Tony the Tiger?
Yeah. He's
a great recruiter.
And I know a lot of people are like, well, I don't want Coley calling plays. Well, don't worry about it. You got Mike Bobo back there. And Mike did a pretty good job last year, so let's give him a look.
I wasn't calling plays either myself. But it just happened that we had some guys get hurt. But I'm happy with what our staff. Mike's going to do a good job bringing Coley in here and help. Coley will help things too. But there's a little bit extra juice to this spring practice because we finally got beat. And even if you had the guys' attention, I think you're going to have it even more of, hey, this is what we got to do. We got to get better at short yardage. We got to get off the field on defense. We can't give up busted plays. We got to take care of the ball in the red zone. All these things we can work on that got us beat, and it got our guys' attention.
Coach, do you have a joke for us?
Not really today. I thought we were going to have so much material with all this this other stuff that I really didn't. But
that's all right. We'll dock it, and you can give us 2 next time.
We'll give you an example of how you get beat, and from the standpoint of everybody was talking about Oklahoma softball. What a great team they had. They won 71 straight, 3 national championships in a row, and with ESPN Plus, you can watch TV right there on your iPad. And so I watched Oklahoma play Louisiana, which is not a real good team. But during that course of the game, Oklahoma made 3 errors, got picked off at second base one time, had a girl on second base leave too soon, and walked about 4 hitters, and they ended up losing in extra innings because they beat themselves. That happens. That happens in football too. Most good teams don't get beat; they lose the game. They beat themselves. Otherwise, they whip everybody.
Honestly,
avoid losing.
well, if you take what Coach just said and you listen to any Kirby Smart press conference, he will give the other teams a ton of credit. But every time you ask him about, hey, give us your thoughts on Tennessee, what do you think about Auburn, Georgia? He always goes right back to his team. And it sounds like coach speak. And this is the one thing in 8 years I've learned about Kirby Smart. When he says what we think is coach speaking cliches about turnovers and not beating yourselves and getting off the field, it's because he, from his toenails to his hair tips, he means it. I can only control what I can control. And if we control our end, we're going to be fine. But he's so furious about them not controlling, or you want to see him lose his mind is when his guys make a mistake. He's like, that's something we can fix. So it's you're dead on. If you listen to any of his press conferences, he talks about not beating themselves.
I think it's going to be interesting that Alabama starts spring practice this week, and I think different scenario with the new coach and all the stuff going on. So that'll be something to watch for Alabama's first practice today.
Interesting. Well, Georgia's practice will be next Tuesday. We may have
Will Kirby be on at 12 o'clock?
That I think so. That's why we're going to have to adjust our time for next week.
Yeah, let's do that.
A little Donnan after dark.
We don't want to steal any thunder from Kirby, because we wouldn't have anybody watching us if they can watch him. I don't blame them. I'd watch him too. And, we'll work that out. And some good questions today, and appreciate Jed sharing that stuff on the combine. And next Wednesday we have the Georgia Pro Day. Maybe we should have our show on Wednesday night.
We could do that. That way we could recap Tuesday's practice and then Wednesday's Pro Day.
Give a promo for Thursday's practice.
Yeah, there you go. All right, folks. That's all the time we have for this week.
It might be. Well, Monday night's when the Bachelor's on, isn't it?
Don't want to miss with that, Coach.
Yeah, next week we got to have a rumors versus fact show, because we're not doing one this week. I was driving back from Charleston yesterday, so I couldn't do a show. But so next Monday we either The Bachelor or rumors versus facts. That's your Monday mandatory viewing. So we'll hit it up Wednesday.
When I watch The Bachelor, it'll be because I'm in a rest home and that's the only thing that's on.
That one TV in the common room that they won't let you change the channel on.
Man, I think.
Okay, great. Now I'm depressed. All right, folks. We'll see you next Wednesday night. Y'all take